and welcome to the Cleveland Heights, University Heights City Schools Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, the 7th of June. Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Wright.
Here.
Mr. Posh.
Here.
Mr. Hines.
Here.
Ms. Serini.
Here.
Ms. Lewis.
Here. I would like to begin with awards and recognitions.
Right. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to begin by recognizing a rising 8th grader from Monticello Middle School. Each year, students from grades 6 through 12 enter the annual Stop the Hate contest hosted by the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage. Students were asked to think about a time they witnessed or experienced acts of injustice, racism, bigotry, or discrimination, and write about how they responded or will respond in order to create positive change. We are proud to celebrate our district winner, one of 20 finalists across all of Northeast Ohio, and second place winner, Chelsea Gibson. Is Chelsea here? I don't see Chelsea here. We'll congratulate her in her absence. Chelsea is also an active member of the National Junior Honor Society, Power of the Pen, and the Minority Student Achievement Network. Congratulations, Chelsea. We are very proud of you and can't wait to see you excel at the high school level. She's already told me she's going to be on the superintendent's cadre.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm excited. All right. So congratulations. Next, I'd like to recognize an academic achievement coming out of our athletic department. The National High School Coaches Association honors the nation's finest senior student athletes who carry at least a 3.6 GPA and compete at the varsity level, and names them All-American Scholars. We are proud to say that the recent graduates from both the girls and boys squads of the Heights High swim team have been named Academic All-Americans. Congratulations are in order to, and I know I see at least one swimmer here, Helen Barr, Patricia Chen, Emmett Fluarty, James Huff, Noah Priera, and Andrew Teets. And I'm going to ask our swimmer to come up to recognize everyone. The future Dr. Huff, if you saw his graduation cap.
Yes.
Graduation. We are even more proud to say that these 6 student athletes have among the highest GPAs in the entire country, earning them the gold and silver awards. And so we're going to come and take a picture of you.
And I believe you are in possession of a brand-new Heights High record, are you not?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Bravo.
Congratulations.
Ready? 1, 2.
You can come up and take a picture if you want. You can come up and take. Did you get? Okay.
Yes, bravo.
Yes.
Finally, our latest Tiger Team members of the month for May, the most exciting month in the school year, when everyone has lots of energy. These CHUH staff members have been recognized by their peers and members of the community for going above and beyond to continuously contribute to the culture of excellence in our district. Your colleagues who nominated you for this recognition have shared these heartfelt words about you. From the Board of Education, Eric Brazil. Eric has been an integral member of the grounds crew for years. He has pride in the work that he performs for the school district. Eric recently volunteered to fill in as the lead grounds, ensuring our facilities' exteriors look great each and every day. He scheduled the crews to perform daily tasks and follows up on their performance. From Boulevard Elementary School, Deanna Whitfield. Deanna goes over and beyond for our kids in our multiple disabilities self-contained room. She has brought in and prepared engaging activities and resources to suit the many needs of our students. For Mother's Day, she had the idea to give the kids' mothers high-quality portraits of their children with them dressed up and styled by her. She advocates for our kids, she loves them so much, and she works hard in serving our kids. From Canterbury Elementary School, Natalie Mortimer. Natalie is always asking how she can assist, and she gives 100%. She communicates to teachers consistently about their students and the progress they've made on interventions. From Delisle Option Center, Ed Stayer. Ed is helpful, considerate, and always willing to go an extra step in making sure that his responsibilities are completed to the very highest standard. Ed has shown superior responsibility in taking care of the inside and outside of the Delisle Option Center. Our department has always been sprayed and wiped down very carefully, especially during peak periods of COVID. Ed's easygoing manner makes him a very pleasant co-worker, too. From Fairfax Elementary School, Maggie Brooks. Maggie always goes above and beyond at our school. She took on a role of a Title I support teacher partway into the school year and immediately fit right in. She takes on extra jobs and helps out her co-workers in any way she can. She always has a positive attitude and is great at remaining calm in times of stress. She goes out of her way to check on her students, even when it's not her time with them, and overall has a great relationship with students at the school. From Garrity, Brooke Sikirchi. Ms. Sikirchi joined the preschool team last year and has been an asset to the program. The students she works with have intensive developmental needs, and she excels at providing support for them. She communicates well with her parents and collaborates with them. She has developed a collaborative culture with her aide team to ensure everyone is supporting each student's growth. From Heights High, Keith Newman. Keith is not only a technical expert and stage team leader, he is also extremely helpful, flexible, and creative. We can always count on Keith to be sure any event in the auditorium looks and sounds amazing. From Monticello Middle School, Janice Andres. Janice is an individual who goes above and beyond her call of duty. Name a school committee, and she's on it. Need a volunteer, coverage, classroom support, she's on it. She is essential in our school's function, and she does not get enough credit where credit is deserved. From Noble Elementary School, Hassan Harris. Hassan has been an asset to Noble since he began working here last year. Recently, he has stepped up and been doing tremendous work to keep Noble shining single-handedly. He always has a smile and a kind hello to anyone he sees, and he works amazingly hard. We are so lucky to have Hassan at Noble. From Oxford Elementary School, Carla Campbell. Carla has a wonderful personality. She is always willing to help and is a true team player. She is just an overall great employee and human being and an asset to Oxford. From Roxborough Elementary School, Liz McKinley. Liz is already making plans for next school year. She is looking ahead to student needs and seeking out resources. Liz and her teammate Kim Bishkoff plan for fun activities that match the curriculum for their students. And finally, Megan Kennedy from Roxborough Middle School. Megan is always willing to help out whenever and wherever she can. She volunteered to chaperone Oxford Hub's field trips, which can be quite a task with 32 young students. She has shown support at our events and for our students, and she doesn't even work at Oxford. If you are lucky enough to know Megan, you know exactly what I am saying. She is the Tiger team member we all want and need. Congratulations to the winners. We thank you all for another amazing school year. We wish you a great fall and a happy summer. Please come up so we can take a picture with you.
I'd just like to also note that in addition to being a Tiger Team Member of the Month, that Liz McKinley is also the president of the Nardonia Hills City School District Board of Education. So thank you for being on both sides.
Yes.
And that concludes our recognitions for this evening.
Okay. Next, we have a requested audience from Gregory Soltis and Matthew Weimer. They're going to present to us on behalf of the city about the future redevelopment project on Taylor Road. Podium, so you have a microphone, and you should be able to plug in your machine.
I was going to share through Google Meet, correct?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
And so I think it says you can't join this call, no one responded to your request.
Oh,
to
maybe
join
I need
the
to
call.
get in.
Oops.
Uh-oh. Superintendent has to
I'll
let you
get
in.
Sorry.
I need to feel the love,
There you go.
Right.
just in case.
And then I need to let you in. Can you try now?
I'm so glad I don't know how to do that.
wondered that. I don't know why that is, but it does. You're right, it does, no matter where you are.
Why does it follow you?
It follows Beverly. She's
follows
always
you.
on screen.
By popular demand.
There you go.
Maybe there's actually a camera in your microphone, and that's the reason.
That could be.
Yeah.
Now you're going to really freak her out.
Exactly.
Okay, I just tried to join again.
Yep, there you go. You should be in now.
Sharing screen.
While he is wrapping that up, I'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm the Business Development Manager for the City of Cleveland Heights. I know Mayor Sarin is on his way. He had something at City Hall he was wrapping up, so he will be here shortly as well. But I wanted to thank the school board for giving us the opportunity to sort of introduce this project, which is one we're very, very excited about, and you'll hear more of what some of those specifics look like or could look like. And this will be, what you'll see is likely a multi-year process with a number of phases to it for the Taylor corridor. Most immediately, we're starting off with the Taylor Tudor properties. For those of you that are aware, that's a series of what looks like from the street 2 buildings on Taylor Road. It's technically actually 3 different buildings. It's fallen into disrepair and tax delinquency over a period of a number of years. And, the city took a number of steps to reposition the property and get us to this point here today. We took the properties through tax foreclosure, the first one in 2018, and then the last 2 parcels here in 2021. As part of that, trying to coordinate and kind of lay the groundwork for a new development here. And there you can see a picture from Google Map of the buildings there in question. We also created and established listing it on the National Register of Historic Places, so it will qualify for historic tax credit. So these are late 1920s, early 30s construction. This is what we call the Stadium Square District. If you go back and look at the history, there was actually supposed to, where Kane Park is, where the sledding hill is, was actually supposed to be a stadium. That, originally back in the 20s, a bond issue was put on the ballot for the taxpayers to approve that never got approved. But the Stadium Square, district, these buildings here are what kind of became of that. So we did get these listed so that they will qualify for historic tax credits in the future. Trying to preserve these buildings because they are such a landmark visually and for the community was always a priority going into this. And then back in August of '21, we issued an RFP to identify developers and development teams to partner with the city on a rehabilitation and redevelopment of the property. We received 4 responses back, and we got 4 very good quality responses back, any of which would have been an opportunity for us to move forward with. But ultimately, City Council authorized us to negotiate a memorandum of understanding to work with WXC Development on both the Taylor Tudor property here that we're going to be most immediately talking about, but also for a larger vision for what we also call the Kane Park Village District. So I will turn it over to our partners from WXC to talk a little bit about that. Again, there's the Taylor Tudor buildings themselves, and then there's also going to be a number of additional phases and on additional properties throughout that district that pose potential opportunities in the future. And again, this is all very preliminary, especially as you get out to some of the additional properties, and we'll certainly come back to the board to give periodic updates as things start to materialize a little bit more, to provide those updates and get feedback as appropriate.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Matthew Weimer with WXC Development, and this is Greg Soltis of RDL Architects and Planning Firm. And we're excited to go through the presentation with you all tonight. We're going to try to be efficient with time because we've gone through it a couple times and it takes quite a while, so we'll move kind of quickly. So our vision for this district, Kane Park Village, is basically to finish the work of the original developer that Brian alluded to previously when he was talking about the Stadium Square District. The first pieces of that developer's vision were the single-family homes that he constructed on Superior Park Drive, taking advantage of the great views into Kane Park. After that, he worked his way east towards South Taylor Road and began construction of the commercial mixed-use buildings that are the subject of the first phase, as Brian mentioned. So just a brief overview of our presentation. First, team introduction, relevant experience, and our vision. So we've assembled a very interesting dynamic team for this broad, holistic neighborhood revitalization. Historic Preservation Group, headed by Heather Rudge, is the firm the city went to when they sought to create the National Register District, Stadium Square. We've worked with Heather quite a few times on previous projects, and I kind of refer to her as the guru of historic preservation. She lives and breathes this stuff, and she's extremely passionate about it. Little Jacket is another unique firm, local Cleveland Heights firm, creative, marketing, branding, strategic partner of ours. Also, Bob Zimmer. Bob's a unique individual. He's a realtor, but he's so much more than that. He was instrumental in creating the Gateway CDC downtown and ushering in East 4th's revitalization. He's had his hand in a number of historic preservation projects around Northeast Ohio, most recently League Park and the Huff neighborhood, which Greg will just share a little bit about with you all shortly. Greg, feel free to kind of describe RDL's background and what you all do.
Sure. So RDL stands for Ron David Lloyd, who's my boss. He's a great guy, best job I've ever had. And he's not listening, so I don't get bonus points for that. But we're a firm, an architecture firm, but we also have a placemaking studio that has urban planners, urban design, graphic design, and architects all together. So we like to look at projects holistically, and we even work often with our interior design studio to connect like interior spaces to outside. So we did approach this project a little bit more holistically and looked at the entire neighborhood and tried to think how the renovation of these buildings could be more than just, adding some apartments and retail to the neighborhood in a historic building. So that was our approach. Do you want to go through? So we're just going to show you a couple projects, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Some of these projects WXE has worked on with some of the team members that you saw in the previous slide, others not. And there's also a few projects in here that RDL and other team members have worked on together that we were not involved in. So this is the College Club. It's in Cleveland Heights. We're just finishing up this project right now. It includes historic preservation tax credits used to do an adaptive reuse of a historic mansion and carriage house, as well as the construction of 13 new for-sale townhomes on the property. It's on Overlook, just above Little Italy. Just quickly go through some before and after. This is the main entry. Former office space, which is now an apartment. Beautiful historic structure. There's 12 fireplaces in all.
Get married there.
I've heard a lot of people say that, and it's nice to hear.
This is an image of League Park back when it was still standing. And as Matt mentioned, Mr. Zimmer is working here. He worked to help create the baseball museum that's in the old gatehouse. So we've been working on a project to rethink the neighborhood and add development along East 66th Street. And this is a concept for a mixed-use building. And really the overall approach, which is a similar approach that we took to South Taylor, is what's the asset in the neighborhood that could be a draw for people and give the neighborhood a flavor and a character that people of the region would, stick in their mind, so that it would be someplace that they want to visit, spend a little money when they're there. Maybe they like it enough someday they'll buy a house and move there. That happened a lot when I lived in Tremont. So you can see the architecture kind of plays off the Jewel Box ballpark that was League Park. And it's also an integrative sort of approach where this is just part of a bigger plan for the neighborhood to add a number of different types of units that could appeal to a broad socioeconomic demographic, because a mixed income neighborhood is a healthy neighborhood. So that was part of our approach as well.
One of the interesting things is the stadium that was never built, but created the name Stadium Square District, was meant to rival League Park. It was that era.
Interesting.
This is from Little Jacket, as I'm sure you all are well familiar. They did a great job with this campaign, as well as working with the city for the 100 years celebration and the campaign All Are Welcome. Those are actually windows of the Taylor Tudor building. Another example of Little Jacket's relevant experience, Open Doors Academy, American Library Association. These are current projects that we're working on now. This is a combination of historic preservation and new construction in Little Italy on Mayfield Road. Here is new construction in Shaker Heights on Fairhill Courts, just to the north of the Cleveland Skating Club. It's a small infill site. The club used it as access to their tennis courts. They have clay tennis courts there, so they used it to bring in new clay and take out the old clay. And they've been going through a capital campaign the last few years and no longer needed the parcel. And that's when we were introduced to them. And what you see here is 9 condominiums in construction building. Another combination of historic preservation and new construction. This is in University Circle on Euclid Avenue, directly across from Cleveland Institute of Art. So the building in the foreground is the Monmouth Building. We'll be using historic preservation tax credits to preserve this building and bring it back to life. And then a new construction building in the back with ground floor retail space. We're also going to attempt to vacate the street, East 116th Street, which is shown right there, where you see some bistro tables, and create more of a pedestrian experience and connection from Cleveland Institute of Art up through that direction into the heart of the Case Western campus. This is a project under construction right now in Little Italy called Via 126. These are a collection of 3 new construction for sale homes. And this next phase, which is about to begin now, is a new construction condominium building directly across the street from the bocce courts at the Alta House, if you're familiar. Now we'll get to our vision for Kane Park Village. As Brian mentioned, this started as a response to the city's request for proposals solely for the Taylor Tudor Plaza buildings, 3 parcels, 3 buildings technically. But one of the prompts in the actual RFP document asked to look more broadly and see if there's opportunity for additional assemblage to kind of broaden the scope, if you will. And we really took that to heart. And our approach to this project is a holistic approach, looking at it at the district level, not just site level. There's a major asset, obviously, in Kane Park here. And this diagram shows existing conditions.
So the sledding hill is the top left-hand corner, correct?
Exactly.
And the synagogue. Okay, just so I'm oriented the right way around.
So here, if the mouse gets there, these are the Taylor Tudor Plaza buildings, Taylor Road Synagogue, and Kane Park here.
Right.
And I'll let Greg talk a little bit about some planning principles with the vision.
Can I go to the next slide? So, there we go. So now north is up. And so you can see the sledding hill in kind of the middle of the page. So when we were looking at the neighborhood, you know, we were thinking about how Cleveland Heights has some very iconic neighborhoods that are very distinctive. And then there are other neighborhoods that don't really register so much on the mind of people who say don't live in Cleveland Heights. Because, you know, a lot of people from outside of Cleveland Heights come to go to, you know, Cedar Lee, see a foreign film, go to dinner. So we were looking at this district and thinking, okay, well, what are the assets in this neighborhood if we were to put this neighborhood back on the map as Kane Park Village? And so that the approach was to think about the assets in the neighborhood that could be leveraged to give the neighborhood like a more of a brand identity regionally, and then using like best practices in planning and urban design, you know, what could that place look like? So you can see, you know, the park itself, so the asset being Kane Park, and obviously going to see concerts there. And so one of the things that we had talked about was taking the synagogue and letting it be maybe a winter home for Kane Park, so that programming can happen all year round and the neighborhood can be a draw for people all year round. And then that could in turn, you know, supply or provide customers for restaurants or shopping or other things that could be added to the neighborhood, especially since there's a significant amount of retail to fill on the bottom of the Taylor Tudor building. And then additionally, we looked across the street at the shopping center that is pushed back from the street. Oh, there we go. Yeah. This is a rendering. Okay, here we go. So these are the
Taylor Tudor Plaza.
yeah, the Taylor Tudor Plaza ground floors. And our plan really is to restore the buildings pretty much close to what they were. Even the units inside are really quite nice, so there are not many modifications that we have to make to the building. It's really about bringing it back, you know, to its former glory. And letting the ground floor shops, you know, from the outside look like they did with, you know, the more historic storefronts and canopy structures, and then just restoring the units up above. We did have a couple of different ideas, you know, that we're kicking around for making them more appealing to current lifestyles. And then you can see here the total count. So 44 rental units, and then about 22,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, which again, is a significant amount of retail space to fill, especially if we're doing some maybe more small local retailers. And then here's a vision, of what that street could look like, especially considering that there's a TLCI project that's, one of those projects funded by NOACA to re-envision what a street could be like. So we've thought about that. There's a lot of excess capacity on the street. The lanes are really wide, and it's almost confusing as to where the on-street parking is and if there's 1 or 2 lanes when you're headed south on South Taylor. So part of it is to re-envision the street as well. Do you want to talk to the timeline?
Yeah, and another major point with this first phase of the overall vision, it involves an application for historic preservation tax credits. Given the National Register District, the prominence.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Given the National Register District that the city thankfully took the time and consideration to establish with Heather a few years ago, we will be seeking historic preservation tax credits.
So like I mentioned, the idea for the synagogue is to preserve the building, and to preserve the worship space, but to use that potentially as a winter home for Kane Park, to fill the rest of the building with living spaces, so there'd be like apartments, and have a winter garden in the center where there's a community room right now, where actually townhouse type units would face that, and it would feel almost like an indoor-outdoor space. Additionally, we have some townhouse units facing Kane Park. Part of that is, Kane Park is recessed down really below street level, so the more visibility that we can get onto the park, it's better for people. It feels safer when you have eyes on the park. People could be on their front porches looking into the park space, which is a good thing. So that was part of our overall concept as well. And you can see there too, there's a thing called a stramp that we'd like to put there, which is it's like if a ramp and stairs had a baby. And it really would allow the park space to be accessible to everybody, and it would allow people in wheelchairs or with other disabilities to enter the park space in a celebratory fashion with everybody else without having to have any special railings that identify it as this separate sort of accessible route.
And one other thing I'll point out with what you see here on the screen, we're really trying to follow the cues of that original developer that I mentioned. He started his vision along Superior Park Drive with those for sale homes. And he was taking advantage of the location and views into Kane Park because it truly is an asset, a natural asset. The orientation of the synagogue building, the way that it's sited, provides for great views into Kane Park also. The school portion of the building, which you see kind of running parallel with the park, in particular, and we would orient the for sale units in the same fashion.
And the stairs on the Stramp also would be a great place to sit and watch your kids sled or, any activities going on in the park. So it's like that stadium idea that was there originally, it has a little hint of that. And then here you can see that street, which is Superior
Park Drive.
Yeah, Superior Park Drive. Actually, if you walk down it, there's other access points into Kane Park. So the thinking is, people could come here, park in this district, walk to Kane Park in the summertime, walk back this way, and then you'll see that there's like a plaza space there. So that would be a truly public plaza, a place for the community to interact, gather. You bump into your neighbors there, you grab coffee, and you could walk through that plaza space into the parking garage. So this shows some of our thinking. That was the existing shopping center. So bringing the buildings up to the front, pushing the parking behind the buildings, which is one of those best practices in planning and urban design. Creating a vertical tower that would be the vertical circulation for all the buildings that are joined there on that side of the street. Opening up this plaza space, but not letting it be a U, like where you get stuck at the back. You can still walk through the back again for safety, and also for just keeping it open, and then having the bridge that goes across so you don't have to look at the parking garage. It would have, it would we have some renderings you'll see where we've tried to think about the architecture thoughtfully. And also you can see how things turn into the plaza. And then we thought about a lot of things too, like in all the excess space that's on the street, like having wider sidewalks, buffering the pedestrian area from the cars on the street. What kind of paving would potentially be in the street to make that really feel like the center of this neighborhood. And you can see there too, breaking up the architecture, even though that might be one building, it appears to be many different buildings on the street, which is how human-scaled buildings always were built historically. And also reflecting the architecture that is across the street, so kind of paying homage to the historic architecture. This is a view as if you were kind of right by where the sledding hill is, looking up into the neighborhood. And you can see on the right there's another access point. So you could park and you could go to the sledding hill too. And then the idea too of maybe introducing a median and having the park space jump across the street and letting that green space expand over towards where the funeral home is.
Now, the funeral home is building a massive extension right now
Mm-hmm.
and expanding their space, but so you're not considering any of that because that's their land.
Well, Matt's he's done some deals with lots of people. Like talking to people, right?
They have some excess land that they're not using, but obviously, yeah, they're in the process of a major expansion of their facilities there.
Yeah, I'm just, because, people park at the funeral home and walk down into Kane Park to go to concerts and shows and things, and I'm wondering whether that would change with all of this.
I think as part of that, I think that's kind of factored into it, because if the Taylor Commons portion is going to happen, there's a structured parking garage that is part of it. So essentially, that's going to bring additional parking to the district as a whole, to provide parking that isn't there for Taylor Tudor, which has always been a challenge, that they don't have parking, but then also have additional parking for Kane Park visitors or Berkowitz as well when they have larger services as well. So ultimately, this will add parking inventory to the district.
And that's one of the, parking's always been the one challenge of Kane Park. We've done a ton of research, read a lot about Kane Park, and have come across letters from decades and decades ago lamenting, the parking issue that exists there. And it's a major attraction, as it should be. It's also unique in that it's in the middle of a fairly dense neighborhood. It's dense residential on both the north side and south side. So we're also trying to mitigate a traffic parking concern within those residential nodes of the neighborhood. You'll also notice other commercial districts throughout Cleveland Heights, whether it's Coventry Village, now Cedar Fairmount, Cedar Lee. There are parking structures there. And they're serving a purpose to the benefit of the broader community there. So as Brian, correctly pointed out, it's a major piece of this overall puzzle and will provide a true public benefit.
Isn't that going to the next slide?
Yeah, it's
One slide delay.
lagging.
If it's my-
Advancing on our screen.
Is this even on?
The next few slides talk about that area specifically, though, the funeral home property
They're
and in that corner there. And what we see for that specific area is a different type of housing for sale, something that addresses a typology that is in short supply in Cleveland Heights, and that's a housing option that allows for aging in place. Cleveland Heights has a ton of fantastic homes. That's one of the things people love most about it as a community, the historic homes. They're fantastic, however, they're difficult to adapt to allow for aging in place. And when people get to a certain point, a certain age, things just become a little bit more difficult, climbing the stairs a few times a day, and then it becomes a safety issue. There hasn't been much by way of new construction in Cleveland Heights that specifically addresses that need. So that's kind of our vision for that site in particular. And it would be of a cluster typology. Fee simple, again, owner occupied, but we see it as establishing a bit of a gradient, if you will, in density. So if you could picture the most dense use residentially along both sides of Taylor, and then as you're working either east or west into the existing residential neighborhoods that are primarily two-family or single-family, this would sort of act as a buffer or gradient, stepping down the density from the most intense use of multifamily to the least intense, least dense use of single-family.
Are there elevators in the existing Tudor Taylor buildings?
There are not.
Are you planning to add those?
We're considering it, yeah.
How many
By
houses are we
virtue of-
talking about on this cluster housing development?
So that, oops.
Approximately 16. And again, this is a later phase that'll kind of depend on site conditions, and eventually, obviously, site control.
It's an interesting use of one of our parking lots.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the parking for registration.
But
Number
there's
10,
plenty of parking on the other side of the building still.
that's true. Yeah.
Just to go back briefly to the elevator question, we do intend to locate an elevator on site, and we're constrained a little bit by virtue of the historic preservation tax credits. I don't think that will have any issues, though. I think there's a way that we can add one in the rear that's not visible from the street. And because those technically two buildings on the north side of Superior Park Drive meet one another, I think we can do a single elevator that would service all of those apartments on the second
And
and
then they
third.
would connect to either side.
Yep, exactly. There's vertical circulation existing, kind of, it's not exactly the halfway point, but towards the middle of those two buildings. So that would be a natural location, and from there, serving in either direction.
Now, for the housing developments, are they single homes or multi-family homes? And what area are you looking at developing the homes?
So it's a few different sites and a few different housing typologies, and that was sort of the intent from the beginning, to create as much diversity in the housing that we're proposing. So it's a combination of multifamily apartments that are for rent. Those will be both market rate and workforce housing, or some measure of affordable. Also for sale owner-occupied homes, and those will come in a variety of shapes and sizes. What you saw before on the Taylor Road Synagogue parcel, the ones sort of overlooking the park, we see those as more of a townhouse style, taking advantage of some of the efficiencies you can create with townhomes. But the site here on the screen, like I mentioned, that's really meant to address that gap in the market that hasn't been provided, allowing for aging in place. There's a ton of demand for it and really just no product. And the demand is coming from people that are longtime residents, longtime members of the community, that have really no desire to relocate. There's just not that intersection of their needs and the product to meet, those needs.
Now, back to the synagogue, you say you will continue to have that as a place of worship, and then I believe that you said it was a community center, or that's going to be connected to that. Could you explain that again, please?
Yeah, are you familiar with the Maltz Performing Arts Center?
Yes, I've lived in the area for 45 years, that's why, yeah.
Fantastic. So there on high holidays, there's still worship that occurs. We would envision a similar practice here, and the space would serve as a performing arts center, hopefully in conjunction with the park and allowing for some off-season performance space.
Thank you.
So I have a couple layered questions here. Kinez is putting a development in just down the street. I'm sure you're aware of that. And I don't know if they've sold any properties. We haven't seen really anything go on the ground yet, no shovel readiness, which has been a concern of mine, because sometimes until you see it, you're not going to buy it. So I'm sort of curious on the impact of that development and what you're working on. Also, your priorities. I mean, what do you see? What are you guys planning on tackling first? Property acquisition. I mean, how much of this stuff have you already have available to you? I mean, I believe the 3 buildings, the city does. I mean, you have control of those buildings now, which is phenomenal. So I'm just kind of curious to see, timeline. I mean, what are you going to need from this board in the way of, either tax incentive or whatever? So I guess there's a bunch of loaded questions there.
Yeah, and I guess, part of the reason we're here today is this is super preliminary and early. We're at the visioning stage, we're at the community engagement stage. There will, most likely be future conversations and future asks down the road. We're not far enough along on any of these pieces yet to know what those look like yet. And I also say the city and WXE, we're also working to identify as many different opportunities to inject additional funds into the capital stack, whether it's through, things like the transformational mixed-use tax credit the state has rolled out the last couple of years. Jobs Ohio has a Vibrant Communities grant opportunity. There's obviously they're pursuing the historic tax credits. So we're looking at a variety of different things to bring in and inject as many dollars as possible. But ultimately, I think we all realize infill development is, expensive, and, there is more than likely going to be some sort of gap and or role for the school district. But we're not there yet, so we don't know quite what that looks like. The Taylor Tudor piece, that's the part that we feel good about, having construction on, at least on that component, happen in the first half of 2023. The other components kind of, remain to be seen, and whether it's site control or whatever the case may be. The Taylor Road Synagogue, for example, similar to the Taylor Road or the Taylor Tudor properties, most likely will have to go through a tax foreclosure as well. That is a $4 million property tax delinquent property. So we'll have to go through that process on that one. And then obviously there's other private pieces of property that, WXZ would most likely take the lead on as far as the site control piece. And especially as you get out away from the Taylor Tudor piece, there's going to be, like I said, a lot of community engagement, because obviously this is not just a one-off, this is a potentially transformational type of project for that entire district. So, yeah, so we're not quite sure what that looks like in the future, but, we'll certainly, look forward to having that conversation with you in the future.
So what would be the second phase after the buildings which are already in the city's control?
I guess that's kind of to be determined, partially between when site or acquisition can happen on the synagogue and or the Taylor Commons piece. Like we alluded to, the Taylor Road Commons piece probably plays a role in the parking for the Tudors, so they're somewhat connected, but the timing is still to be determined.
So for the Taylor Tudor building, you're envisioning just apartments, there'll be no condos?
Correct.
They'll all be rented facilities. And you were or you were not thinking light retail on the first floor, or is that apartments?
No. The first floor commercial space will remain commercial as it has.
As it has been
Since-
the whole time?
Correct.
Thank you.
But I assume you're going to upgrade it and put AC in some of those buildings, or maybe not.
Of course.
And how many floors are those currently?
3.
3.
3, okay.
Well, well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to also add, the historic preservation tax credit process, which involves both the Taylor Tudor Plaza buildings as well as the synagogue, because we would be applying for those tax credits on both sites, that alone kind of sets it up as a phased approach. We wouldn't apply in the same round, if that makes sense. So our intent is to start with the Taylor Tudor Plaza buildings and meet the September application submission deadline for that round. And I think, I'm trying to recall your previous questions. You mentioned the project slightly to the south and on the east side of South Taylor.
Right.
Yeah, we're well aware of it, and that it's on the University Heights side of things. And that's kind of another unique feature of this neighborhood. It's a meeting point, it's a nexus. So it's an entrance to University Heights, it's an entrance to Cleveland Heights. And because of that, it's important to get all of this right. So as Brian said, this is kind of meant to be an introductory meeting, and I hope the first of a series with respect to this overall vision. There's a huge opportunity here, I think, and I hope to see things moving forward with that project soon. I
Well,
expect there will be
I think
demand.
when we all voted to approve our part of that deal, we did it, I can't speak for the board, but from our conversations, we were all very excited because it seemed like it would be some spark that would help turn around that community. Not saying that that community needs to be turned around, but there was some development that clearly needs to happen on that street.
Yeah.
Which you're taking on, and whatever we can do as a community to make more vibrant communities, we all benefit from that, and we see that value.
Great.
I'm excited about this, but the devil's always in the details. It's like,
course.
What's coming out of the ground first? And I know apartments, you generally don't see it, especially one-bedroom apartments, you're not going to see a lot of children in there, so it's not going to really increase our roles, which is, we'd like to see housing that can embrace families. We've got an excellent school district. But we're also a misunderstood school district. We have a senior class with $16 million worth of scholarships, which is far better than any other local school around, but people still choose not to use our schools for a variety of reasons. They don't get the performance aspect of what we do. So we think we're vibrant, but we need to have a community around our district also vibrant, so.
Did you want to go? There's a lot in this to like. I like the variety of what you're talking about. I love the historic preservation. This is a community with a great deal of historic buildings and structures, and we love them. And so it's really nice to see that piece of it. And boy, those buildings are really diamonds in the rough. We've all been here long enough to remember those buildings when they were very much occupied and very much alive. I do think that in order for it to be a success from day one, I really do feel that you need to address the parking, because there's not parking for what you have in mind for phase one. If it's 100% occupied and they just have one car, you've got a problem day one. I'm sure that you're aware of that. I would, like Jim mentioned, I think it's important in terms of the residential mix to think more about some family development. One of the things that really struck me is the new vision of what I saw of Taylor Road. And what I really liked about that is a number of things. It's an area that, at least graphically, is sort of a slow down area, whereas it right now is very much an area of it's between me and where I want to be. Which, owning a 110-year-old house is usually Home Depot.
Yeah, it is on the way to the
But I really love that. I love the idea that it's an area that the traffic is literally going to slow down and people will pause and look around. But I also think that it's a really important, from a development perspective, I want many people's, the visionary eye to think, ooh, Severance's a block away. And wouldn't it be nice to extend this lovely community into that lovely opportunity? So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see the vision. I'm thrilled to see the larger vision than I was expecting to see. I must say, that I also have great gratitude and respect for your bringing us in so early in the process. And I think that is really critically important and much appreciated. So I'm very familiar with the ramp. What did you call that? Stramp. Thank you. That's my new favorite word. You can do a stramp of that nature, because I've seen these quite a lot. You can do a stramp changing that elevation in that short of a distance. It seems like going up the stramp is going to be quite a task. Going down, not so bad, but going up, you can do that.
As long as the cross-country team can use it for practice, we're good.
I think we can.
Okay.
And I think it's
Yeah.
an important element that deserves real consideration. If you're familiar with this part of Kane Park specifically, and the walk going down, it's probably the steepest out of all of them. And we've walked all of them a lot the past couple of years researching for this proposal. That area in particular is critical, though, because it's so public-facing. It's, one entrance to the park. That and the opposite end at Lee are probably the two most used entrances into the park. And like I said, it's extremely. So if one of our overarching goals is increasing accessibility and truly being welcoming to all, it's something that we need to consider for that location. And I think that we have the distance, the run there. I'll leave it to Greg to speak more specifically about it, but I think the space is there.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just by the nature of the zigzag of it, you can get a really great vertical change because you can zigzag back and forth, so you don't need the entire run to be in one direction.
Yeah, you see these in new schools that are being designed quite a bit, and also you see them quite a bit in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
All the public buildings in D.C., and they're important for two things. One, aging in place. Not all those people are going to be walking that whole way. But also, they're critically valuable to folks with strollers. So that's a really nice vision, nice piece. Bravo to you for that. Sort of solving the topography challenge. So, as I said, I'm really pleased with this for a number of reasons, and I'm eager to see more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a few slides that we haven't gotten to. I don't know how we're doing time-wise. I'll just quickly add one of the overarching elements that we have not touched on yet is community engagement, and we're passionate about that, and we say it, sincerely. It's important to us. It's certainly important to Cleveland Heights, the mayor, and Brian, and it's something that comes up in every conversation. And that area of this entire vision in particular is one which Little Jacket will really flourish and facilitate true collaboration between us, the architects, the city, and the community. So I say that with all sincerity, and we have quite a few creative, fun, and inclusive ways to engage the community that we're excited about sharing with you all in the near future.
That's great.
I do like to hear the collaboration part, and I certainly hope that you will be collaborating with the City of University Heights as well on this, particularly if the ask is going to be coming to the school board at some point. We are a two-city, part of a third city, and I would like to see as much collaboration as we possibly could, particularly if you're going to be asking, residents of University Heights to be participating in this from a tax standpoint. And
Certainly.
obviously, we want it all to look good. It is I'm the one person from University Heights on this board, so I have a vested interest in this. But, this is the gateway between the two cities, and you want it to look, cohesive, and also you want residents from both cities to be able to enjoy whatever we end up with.
Exactly. Yep, of course. We're on the same page. And like I mentioned before, it really is that meeting point. And I said it's an entrance to University Heights and it's an entrance to Cleveland Heights. It doesn't need to feel like an exit from either. They should both be, facing one another together.
It'd be great if we can get a copy of this presentation.
It's not in board
Yes.
docs,
It's not,
and it probably needs to be.
that's what I
Yeah.
was going to say next, so.
If that's something you could send so it can be uploaded into board docs, because I think I saw earlier, protected bike lanes on one of your computer renderings,
Yes.
which is fabulous. That's all I'm going to say. It's like, we need that all over the country, but can we just put those here first, please?
Yeah, we'd be really excited about that. And the other thing, we were talking about just connecting to public transit as well, which really only runs on Cedar and Mayfield.
Right, we don't have anything on Taylor anymore. That bus got nixed.
Right, so having protected bike lanes and alternate ways to get to Mayfield and Cedar so you can connect to a bus was part of our thinking as well.
And people bicycle to Kane Park in the summer.
Yes.
So if we make it safer, more people will bicycle, which would presumably help alleviate some of that parking that we know is always an issue.
Right, and yeah, once you create fully protected bike lanes, you actually increase the participation of people who are biking from anywhere from 3 to 7%. When you don't have it, up to almost 100% of people will ride in protected bike lanes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm
Yeah,
very
thank you for your
grateful that
time.
you came.
Thank you all.
Do you want to say something, Mayor Seren? Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. I did want to say just a few words to wrap up. First, that we are extremely excited about the potential of this project, the transformative nature in that neighborhood. We're trying to build on this sense of preservation and progress and finding that perfect balance. I think that this project does a really good job of taking that preservation aspect and adding progress, creating more diversity in the housing that we offer to people who want to live in our region. And I want to express my thanks to the board for having us in to discuss this. I think maybe it hasn't been Cleveland Heights general way of doing things to come this early in a project to present this kind of this kind of presentation to the board before we sort of get down the road a bit. But I wanted to make sure, and certainly in discussion with the board president, I wanted to make sure that we were, in a robust partnership with the Board of Education on this. We want to hear your input just as much as we want to hear all of the input from the residents of the neighborhood itself and the community at large. And so we'll look forward to taking in your input as well about the project. And I'm interested in continued conversation about this project as it evolves as well. And specifically, I want to point out a few things that I think are extremely important about what this project brings to the table, and that is an increase in density. That neighborhood is already a relatively dense area of Cleveland Heights, but I think that in order to achieve the population goals that we're looking for, and we've decreased in population for a long time, since 1960, in order to start to reverse that trend and create a more vibrant set of neighborhoods, we need to increase the amount of people that we have in those neighborhoods. We need to increase our population, and increase density is a way that we do that. And I think that this project marries increased density with diversity of housing options in a way that allows for that single-family home, but also allows for multifamily living. It creates a center for the community as well, sort of a community gathering space that maintains the character of the synagogue, but also allows for other uses that opens it up to the community as well. And creating a Cleveland Heights where different types of people can meet in a place and learn about each other is exactly what we're always trying to foster, since we started that intentional integration in Cleveland Heights, 50 years ago. And so I just wanted to thank you for allowing us this platform to present this to you. I'm looking forward to a partnership on this. And again, please feel free to reach out with any input or any questions.
Thank you. I mean, now we have time to mull it over, right? Which is what we all need. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to consider the consent agenda, which is rather lengthy tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there anything we want to discuss in particular?
I would like to make a quick statement about the resignations and the new appointments.
Yes, sir.
I was a little, because you read top down, I was hugely disappointed seeing that Dr. Christina Bauer was resigning. And then all of a sudden find out, oh my God, she's going to be our new, she's
Yes.
curriculum and instruction.
Right, don't
So,
panic.
Not panicking anymore, but really thrilled to see that. And she fared well in the staff awards. So
Yep, that's good. It's important to read everything before you react. So,
that is true.
I had
I had the
same.
first reaction, too.
okay, anything else?
Yes, I just want to mention that I will be abstaining from the consent agenda vote because a member of my family is mentioned on it, so.
Okay, we will take that under consideration. I don't think I have anything.
I mean, I can mention, just very quickly, under the finance section, a couple of things you don't typically see. Number one, which is the public library tax budget. You just do that once a year. You're the taxing authority for them, so that's why you're seeing that there. And then items 3 and 4 are a result of House Bill 126, which is, the legislature's further attempts to make it difficult for the district to protect our tax base and our revenue streams. So it is now these types of property tax settlements that are directly with commercial property taxpayers that we've traditionally done in all my years are soon to be not allowed. So at this point, our legal counsel has the board ratifying the ones that are currently in existence and then approving the ones that were in negotiation and, or within that 90-day window of the governor
Of the
passing
new bill
legislation.
being
Correct.
signed into law. Okay, so we
But this will be the
are-
last time you see this, because
Okay.
then past that, we won't be permitted to do that anymore, nor are we really permitted to, file counter complaints to commercial decrease complaints unless there are very strict guidelines and they have to come before the board and there are timing issues. So it's really making it difficult for us to do what we need to do, but here we are.
So the county reassesses everybody's property values every 3 years, and there's a process by which homeowners can go to the Board of Revisions and submit for leniency or a new number if they disagree.
Correct.
So I'm assuming there's a similar process for business property owners.
That's correct. And so traditionally, we've not become party to the residential decrease complaints, but for the commercial, our legal counsel will do a cost-benefit analysis. They'll decide whether it's worth the district's while to participate in that based on the amount of the decrease, and then we'll go through the process of, there's actually a lot of time and effort that is spent on this, both by our legal counsel and by the finance department, trying to make sure that we get to maintain the tax base that we have and the property tax stream that we have. And now we're not going to be able to do that, as well as we were able to do it before.
It just means, though, we have to monitor a lot of the timing. I was always under the assumption that it doesn't change anything that much, except that it's more expensive for us because our lawyers have to be more on top of it. We may have to have more meetings to approve things.
There are also restrictions in terms of what, it has to meet certain thresholds before we're able to participate. So ones that we might have previously, we can't anymore. And then all of the settlements that you're seeing here tonight, which we do many of these every year, we won't be able to do it anymore at all. So, it's going to negatively impact our revenue. To what degree, I don't know, but, CMSD did an analysis on their own, and, Plain Dealer picked that up when this legislation passed, talking about how it was going to negatively impact their overall general fund budget and general fund receipts. So hopefully, to your point, it's going to require a lot of monitoring, perhaps a little more, nimbleness than we've had to have before. Because remember, at the organizational meeting every year, you authorize me to act on your behalf.
Right.
To deal with this. And so that's what I've done. And so now it's just, it's making it more difficult, and our ability to do it as vigorously as we've done before is not going to be there. But
So, this to me is just, here we have a legislature who has passed this law that makes it virtually impossible for us as a school district to defend the integrity of our taxpayers, of our regular, everyday residents' property taxes, by writing legislation that clearly is designed to benefit, and I'm sure was supported by, the donor class of commercial property owners.
it was, yeah.
And so they used their lobbying power, and they were successful in prioritizing their interests, the interests of commercial property owners, over the interests of everyday residents throughout Ohio. It's not just Cleveland Heights, University Heights. This change will be felt by every one of the 611 school districts in the state, and it will negatively impact every single property taxpayer in the state and benefit the small handful of Ohioans who are fortunate enough to own commercial property. This is one of those laws that was passed in Columbus that is just so dirty in my mind. It is the use of power that is purchased by bigwigs with fat wallets. And everybody else is left out of those benefits. And it's just, you know, however, it is also, I think, an important opportunity for us to showcase the work that happens every day here in Miramar, which is often maligned in the community because it's just not very glamorous work. But it's work that folks under this roof have just been doing routinely to fight like crazy for the integrity of our taxpayers. And it happens to some degree, I'm sure, in every school district. But I insist it has happened here more because we have such a really, really well-run and business office and finance office that has a deep understanding of these issues, and they really have gone out and fought for them. So thank you for what you've put in front of us to accept this evening, and voting matters.
Voting matters.
Yes, it does.
Right. So, Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Abstain.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes. Next, we have 3 very happy personnel items, which are not part of the consent agenda. Would you like to talk about those, Superintendent Kirby, or shall I?
You shall.
Okay. So, I am very happy to announce that we have now agreements with all of our bargaining units for the next 3 years. So we will be voting to approve tentative agreements between the Board of Education and the Ohio Association of Public School Employees, Local 102, and Local 617, and the educational, and I can say this, really, the Educational Administrative and Professional Staff Council. So that will then mean that all 4 of our units have new contracts, which will take us through to the year 2026. I'm grateful for everybody's willingness to participate in these discussions in an open-minded and cooperative way, and I'm just ecstatic that this is what we've done, and we didn't have to go through the whole evil process. So thank you to everybody. So we're going to start with the first one. May I have a motion to approve the resolution to approve the tentative agreement between the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School Board of Education and Ohio Association of Public School Employees, Local 102?
So motioned.
I second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
And now, may I have a motion to approve the resolution to approve the tentative agreement between the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School Board of Education and Ohio Association of Public School Employees, Local 617?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
And lastly, may I have a motion to approve the resolution to approve the tentative agreement between the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School Board of Education and Educational Administrative and Professional Staff Council?
So motion.
Second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
And thank you to you, Malia, and to Liz for all your work on this, and Scott, and everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I stepped back and let everybody else do their jobs, and it was wonderful. So thank you very much.
It is these, being able to, and really this comes down to, thank you to the community for supporting our recent levy, most recent levy, because this is what allows us to do it, is the support of the community and their faith in us. And thank you to the leadership of those 3 locals. This is a lot of hours of work, and our employees are lucky to be represented by folks who are as committed and diligent and knowledgeable. It is a hard process. It is a process that taxes your creativity, your stamina, your patience. And so thank you to all of them for that.
And now, Ms. Kirby,
Oh, time for my report. Okay.
time for you, yes.
And before I begin, I want to special acknowledgement to Dr. Lombardo for leading the process of those 3 negotiations. He was the lead on those, so thank you for all of that. In addition to our CFO, Mr. Gaynor, as well. Very excited to, my understanding is that for all 4 of these contracts to be signed, sealed, and delivered this early is somewhat of a unique experience for our district and gives us more time this summer to work and plan collaboratively for next year. So we're very, very glad and for everyone's support and cooperation. So for our superintendent's report, we're going to first start with our final readings of policies, Group C. Turning it over to Dr. Lombardo.
All right, good evening, everyone. We have our final reading of Policy Group C. We have 11 policies. I will be asking for board to take a vote tonight, if they would. I do want to make one comment. There is an updated copy of the weapons policy, 5772. I know, Jody, you asked that we look for some different language, so the language that was placed in there has to do with students shall report any information concerning weapons and or threats of violence by students, staff members, or visitors. And then we added and changed to district staff members who shall promptly inform the building administrator or report to our Safe School helpline. So that kind of encompasses some of the discussion we had last month, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, thank you. If you guys remember, it was, they had to report it to the principal, and I was concerned, what if the principal was not available, and did it negate the things we already have in place that have been working very well? So I'm satisfied with this new language. Thank you for taking a look at that.
Sure.
I also took a close look at the 2 weapons policies today in light of the recent passage of House Bill 99. And so I'm sort of pleased that we already have clear policy around the need for our schools to be safe spaces for everybody,
Right.
despite whatever's going on in Columbus.
All right, any other questions on the policies? Right?
So we need a motion to accept these on the
Please.
3rd reading. May I have such a motion?
I motion that we vote to approve the batch C of policies.
I second.
Mr. Gaynor?
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Wright,
Yes.
Mr. Posh,
Yes.
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Serini.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And next, I will present the May Superintendent's Report. So we continue to align the work that we're doing across our 5 goals, and so you'll see some of the work that has happened and accomplishments that have happened and may align to our strategic plan. As relates to goals 1 and 2, you may have noticed as you came into the door that there was a sign outside noting that we had an award for excellence from our Education Service Center. This award comes based upon recognizing students with special needs, peers, and also educators with their annual Excellence in Education Awards. And so this past May, we have 2 preschool students who were recognized, Teddy Griffith and Cambria Hedman, in addition to our intervention specialist at Monticello, Patty Smith. So that award that we received is in recognition of their hard work. So congratulations to those students and also to Mrs. Smith. We're also very excited that this summer, one of our sophomore students has been named as one of the 2022 Avid student speakers for the Denver Summer Institute. So nationally, Bob, you know, I'm going to ask you because I forgot, you told me this morning, there are how many students in Avid nationally?
Or 100,000? Okay.
And not that many, and 4 students selected, I believe?
So in Denver, there's 3.
3 students who will be speaking at the national conference. One of those students is a Heights High School sophomore. We are very
That's
excited
amazing.
about that. I went to that conference probably 15 years ago. It's a huge deal, and it's a huge honor to have a student selected. This means that Eric's story and his video will be shared across Avid classrooms all across the country as a part of the curriculum and inspiring other students. So we're super excited about that.
Can we get that up?
Oh, I'm sure we definitely.
Are we sending a group?
We do have a group of teachers going for training, Avid training in Denver, so we'll be on site
Sweet.
as well.
So he'll be chaperoning the teachers?
Yes.
That's good. Yes, okay.
I think we need to honor him at a future meeting.
Yeah.
I think you'll
Once he
be
comes
meeting him
back,
soon.
yeah. Good, good.
In terms of our marketing students, they attended DECA Academy. We had Mariah Hudson and Faith Griffin Hodge. They are CTE marketing management students. They participated in the 2022 Emerging Leaders Aspire Academy in Atlanta. This academy aims to empower DECA members by providing effective leadership through goal setting, consensus building, and project implementation. Mariah and Faith were able to attend a special business reception sponsored by AT&T and the National DECA Incorporated, and they met with DECA members from all across the country, and professionals from across the country. So we are glad that our CTE students continue to have great opportunities, not only in our state and district, but across the country. And as previously mentioned, and we will continue to update this amount, the class of 2022 was awarded $16.2 million in scholarship awards. I'm very excited about this, and we know that that information still continues to roll in, so we will update that information as well. Just also wanted to reiterate from a staff perspective in Goals 3, we did have in the month of May our annual staff recognition awards. The Teacher of the Year was Desi Stewart from Monticello Middle School. The Helping Hand of the Year was Angela Cern, who's a preschool classroom professional. And the Administrator of the Year, Scott Smith, the Supervisor of Transportation. We also recognized the 22 retirees and also those employees that have presented at conferences this year. As it relates to family, community engagement, and also operations goals 3 and 5, we had our second strategic plan breakfast in the middle of May to discuss highlights of our 2026 strategic plan. We also had the Heights Tiger 5K and Fun Run on May 14th. This was a fundraiser for our PTA elementary schools, our elementary PTAs. A very fun event, lots of participation and lots of enthusiasm and lots of runners, old and young, or more mature and young.
And did you make a personal record?
And I actually ran up that Kane Park place that they were talking about,
Yep.
the steep hill. Yeah,
Yep.
I felt all of that during the run. The senior prom was held at Lander Haven on May 26th in Mayfield Heights. There are pictures and photos that are available. Great event. Kids had a lot of fun. It was kind of back to what prom used to be. Lots of enthusiasm there, so it was a great time. In addition, we had a beautiful commencement on June 1st at the Wolstein Center. So big accolades to Dr. McKinney and the entire team. There were probably about 30 to 40 people across the district that worked on the graduation, and it really came together very nicely. Too bad you missed it, but it was beautiful.
That's what I heard.
Also, we had both middle schools had their farewell ceremonies on the 31st, and fifth grade promotion ceremonies all on June 2nd. at the same time.
Which is a little crazy.
Yeah,
Because there are only 5 school board
Yeah.
members and 7 buildings, and
Yep.
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, so we're gonna figure that out for next
Because
year.
we would like to be able to attend, or at least have somebody attend.
There's something about that date and time that was very popular, so we've learned that.
Yeah, it was interesting, though, that one thing that was going through my mind is at the elementary, 5th grade promotion ceremonies, though, is I was wondering how many of our parents had to take time off work for that, and if perhaps moving it to an evening time slot might be easier on families. Maybe they've been surveyed, I'm just, maybe this is the
Yeah.
best time, but it was so great to hear those 5th graders speak, and they told their stories, and it was just fantastic, so.
Good time, and the Memorial Day Parade was also a good time, so I want to thank our cheerleaders, our girls soccer team, and coaches, elementary school lacrosse teams, and coaches, cheerleader coaches, for participating. It was a fun and warm day for sure. So thank everyone for that. Right now, we do have our annual student art show that is running currently at Heights Art, so please come by and check it out. It is entitled "What a Time to Be Alive," and it runs through June 12th.
That's this Sunday, right? Yeah.
Yep. Metro Health continues to work this summer, so they will be offering healthcare services for students via the clinic at Heights High School, so students can continue to receive physicals, lab tests, and care for other medical conditions as well. My final update, I just wanted to share where we are as it relates to our work around sex-based harassment and responding to the findings from the Root Cause Analysis Committee. So 3 things where we have started some work. We have sent out our invitations for the advisory group. We shared our updates also in my end-of-year letter, and I had a couple parents reach out who are interested in joining the advisory group. So that was really good, and they have some experience in this field too, so I'll be able to add some additional folks to that. Our dress code committee has been identified, and Amy Bloomberg from the high school is going to be leading this work. We also had a really comprehensive review of our Title IX processes in the month of May, and looked at not only our needs around Title IX policy, but also some of our other HR policies, and just in general district policies as well. As you know, in some districts, there is a compliance officer that provides oversight for all kind of policies and policy implementation. And so we want to take a year to hire a compliance officer to really shepherd this work for this first year, especially post the findings from the Root Cause Analysis Committee. So these are discussions that we have had with our legal counsel. They've given us this advice as they have been working with us this year. So that will be a bit of a change in terms of what we anticipated. But we just want to make sure we get a very strong foundation and structure in place, or maintain a foundation and structure. So we will have be looking for a compliance officer for next year. That means we will hold on some other planned administrative positions so that we can prioritize this Title IX compliance officer position. In terms of other work that's planned, so we will be working on updated communications, again, revisiting the curriculum to make sure that we are addressing consent there. Both student and staff training as the summer planning continues and the school year gets ready to get started again. Our partnership development is ongoing, and we'll continue to train our safety and security staff as well. So that is a lot, but that is my update for the month of May.
Sounds like a busy summer.
It is a busy summer.
All the more reason to be happy that we don't have to open contracts.
Exactly.
That's great.
Liz, you were mentioning the assembling of this new committee. Reminded me that we've talked a long time. We have so many community members involved on volunteers on committees of all sorts. And we've spoken a little bit about the fact that we're great at asking for help. We're not always great about saying thank you. And I was thinking about this. maybe we could say thank you very publicly by, if you're a member of a committee, here's two tickets to Friday night's football game. And at every football game, in one of the breaks, the Heights Schools Foundation is recognized. The members of the Strategic Planning Committee are recognized, something along those lines. I don't care what it is. This is just an idea, because we have a number of home games, and it could be basketball, it could be baseball, it could be swimming, whatever. But I really want us to prioritize saying thank you to these people in a public way
Yeah,
this coming year.
We definitely have had lots of committee work happening, especially during the pandemic planning piece too as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good idea.
So now, Mr. Gaynor, it's your report.
Right.
3 things
We do have 3 things.
for the month of June.
That is correct.
I think this is good.
Oh, stop, sorry.
Here we go. All right. The first thing I'll mention is just that we, in terms of fiscal year end, we're moving along with that. Things are going well, and then we're also working on the budget for next school year. So on the 28th, we'll have lots of updates for you for all of those things.
So that's a reminder that we've moved our work session to be a week later in order to allow you to be ready for that.
Correct, and I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Because the
I just
closer
want to
that
say
work
that out
session-
loud in
yeah.
front of a microphone so people know.
Yeah, the closer it is to the end of the fiscal year, the
The easier
easier
it
it
is,
is for us for audit
So
purposes.
when's that meeting going to be?
The 28th.
Thank you.
Tuesday, the 28th. So yes, again, as a reminder, so we have, for our treasurer's report, this 3 things concept, which is, we're trying to just give you 3 quick pieces of information around school funding or school finance that you can take away and, based on the board's feedback the last time, we'll focus a little on some expenditure items, but we also will put it out on the website, the history of these so that people can go back and see them all in one place. So that was Jody's comment there, so appreciate that. So again, just tie the strategic plan, Goal 5, Objective 3, informing and educating all stakeholders regarding district finances and school funding in Ohio. So the first thing for this month is tax increment financing.
That seems apropos.
Yes, so, and that was intentional. So, and I guess the issue being that there seems to be a common misperception. So you heard a little bit about a possible TIF tonight by the city of Cleveland Heights, with Cedarly Meadowbrook, we're talking about TIFs. So what is a TIF? In a nutshell, that's really when a developer comes to a municipality and asks them to issue bonds and then diverts the property taxes that will be paid on the new development to pay off those bonds. So it's a financing mechanism that is used to help build infrastructure for a lot of these new developments. Now, the point that I really wanted people to take away from this, and not to talk about the benefits or what we like and don't like about TIFs, but only to say that a lot of people confuse a TIF with an abatement. And although they're similar insofar as that school districts do not get money, so those property, but the difference is that the property taxes are paid. They're just going somewhere else. They're not coming to the schools. So in either event, school districts don't get the money. But, and with a TIF versus an abatement, the property taxes are still paid. They're just paid to pay down the debt for the development that's happening. Does that make sense? Any kind of questions on that?
So developers are allowed to receive an abatement of 100% of real estate taxes for 15 years without getting the school board to sign off on it. It's only if a project is looking for longer than that.
Correct. And typically, that's a period of 30 years.
Right,
That
so,
seems to
right,
be
the next
standard.
step would be 100% abatement for 30 years.
Correct,
And that requires us to say, okay.
correct.
And a TIF, because the taxes are not being abated, they're just being rerouted to go do something else. They're not coming to us then we need to sign off on any form of TIF. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. If
Okay.
it's an actual TIF, then the school board's asked to approve it. So that's quick thing number one. Number two, general fund. And I just wanted to make sure that people understand the concept of the general fund, because when we're talking about the five-year forecast, which we will be talking about and do talk about every month, we're talking about the general fund. So without getting into too much into the weeds, USAS is a Uniform School Accounting System. That means that we have this whole account structure that we use for every expenditure and every receipt that we have. Every school district uses it, and that's how they draw these comparisons across districts. So that account string has different dimensions. So the first dimension of that is 3 digits. It's called a fund. And so that fund is, an amount of money that's used for a specific purpose. So it could be a grant, it could be permanent improvement, it could be bond debt, whatever that is. But then the overall general, what we use day to day is the general fund. So when we refer to the general fund, or you hear us speak of that, in particular, when we're looking at the five-year forecast, we're talking about the general fund, which means that we have the discretion to spend those dollars on anything that is legal to spend them on. So just wanted to, because a lot of times when we're talking about that, and in the future, we'll talk a little bit about some of the other dimensions, because then there are different dimensions of the account code that let us track things by building, or whether it's instructional, or whether it's support, or whether it's some kind of supplies and materials, or personnel, or benefits. So there are all these different pieces and parts to that, but the main one is the fund, and that's how we group the expenditures together. So, general fund.
And that's different than the permanent improvement fund.
Correct. Correct. So when you see the five-year forecast, we're only talking about the general fund. Permanent improvement is not in there. Any grant fund, Perkins, ESSER, Title,
Right, so
all
some
those
of
funds
the-
are outside of that. Food service has its own fund, our self-insurance has its own fund. All that's outside of the five-year forecast, only the general fund.
Okay. So the ESSER funds, for example, which we just voted to use some of to hire building tutors, building subs, Tiger Camp folks,
Yes,
they're being paid through money, with money that is not part of the general fund, because that's federal ESSER money. So it's a separate grant, and it has specific rules about where it can go and what it can be used for.
correct. And you will recall that in the five-year forecast, we did have some ESSER money embedded there, but that was really because we spent the money first out of the general fund, and we were going to reimburse the general fund for the ESSER. So, that's it kind of compartmentalizes all these groupings of monies, so. General fund. And the last item is fiscal year, and so this is just a quick and easy one, but often gets confused. So, you have your school year, you have your calendar year, but our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30. So actually, as I mentioned, like right now is really a very busy time for us, and through the summer, it's quieter because, students aren't in the buildings. But for finance in particular, we're closing the books at the fiscal year ends June 30th, and then we're, trying to get everything in place for the next fiscal year. So when you're looking at the five-year forecast, the periods are fiscal years. So if, for example, we refer to fiscal year 23, that is the period July 1 of 22 to June 30th of 23. So the fiscal 23 is the next school year. So it includes, it's inclusive of the next school year, and it's inclusive of half of this calendar year and half of the next calendar year. So that's why it gets a little confusing when you're talking about property taxes and when they're collected versus, when you pass a levy. But the difference is calendar year, fiscal year, school year. So that's the third item, fiscal year. Any questions on that?
Well, taxes are levied for this period here, but they're not paid until later. They're paid in arrears,
Correct.
right? So then you add that extra lag.
Correct.
Which is why sometimes we have to wait around for the money to show up.
Well, and why a lot of times when we model a new levy, say it's for a 3 or a 5 year cycle, it'll be really, we're modeling revenue for 2.5 years or 4.5 years, because there's this half year. Not only is there the lag,
Right.
but your calendar year is only half of a fiscal year.
Right.
So when it would first start, so at any rate. So those are the three things for this month. And as we mentioned, right down here is the link to the website that we've included. So now on the website.
So the public can go and
Correct.
see these. That's
And we're going to keep
wonderful.
we're
That's
going to
great.
keep a running list of these. So Sandra in my office put this under the public school funding tab under finance, and then, one just has to click on that May 2022, and you'll see the actual presentation with a more detailed description of the summaries here.
That's great.
Thank you.
That is great.
That's really good. Thank you.
And that's
Yeah.
it for me tonight.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, and now it's my turn. So, last week, as I was leaving town, the governor signed House Bill 99. Although I know many people in our community were sending emails and leaving messages in Columbus urging our legislators not to pass House Bill 99 and urging the governor not to sign it. That happened anyway. So once my blood stopped boiling, I decided we needed to write a resolution. And so I am proposing to the board tonight a resolution in opposition to House Bill 99. And if you will indulge me, I'll read it. Whereas the Cleveland Heights, University Heights City School District Board of Education is clear in its policy and practice that the purpose of education is to facilitate the development of the potential of each and every student, and that philosophy includes our full commitment to maintaining schools that are safe, secure, and supportive. And whereas the board further remains committed to a weapon-free school environment, thank you, Dr. Lombardo, and prohibits students, employees, and community members from possessing, storing, making, or using a weapon, including a concealed weapon, in a school safety zone and any setting that is under the control and supervision of the district. And whereas, despite school safety being a #1 priority for schools nationwide, school violence has become an epidemic in this country. And whereas that violence must be addressed by Ohio's leaders in a way which actually enhances safety rather than makes schools less safe. And whereas the children and school employees of Ohio deserve to attend school without fear of death or injury, and their families deserve to send them to school without the same fear. And whereas multiple polls have shown that the majority of Americans support action to enact stricter gun laws to prevent dangerous individuals from obtaining firearms. And whereas mental health issues have been identified as an underlying cause of many preventable gun death tragedies, with enhanced social-emotional learning in schools as one of the many ways in which to address these serious mental health concerns. And whereas this Board of Education finds that enacting common-sense gun laws and mental health legislation would protect the children, teachers, staff, schools, and residents of this district. And whereas this Board of Education passed a very similar resolution over 4 years ago in March of 2018, and whereas our Cleveland Heights Teachers Union, Local 795, agrees that their members are teachers, not law enforcement officers, and whereas our Cleveland Heights Teachers Union, Local 795, agrees that arming staff makes neither staff nor students safer, but rather endangers them even more. Therefore, be it resolved that the Cleveland Heights, University Heights City School District Board of Education rejects the notions inherent in House Bill 99 that weapons in schools will enhance anyone's safety, that less training and less rigorous training on firearm safety will enhance anyone's safety, that universal concealed carry will enhance anyone's safety. The CHUH City School District Board of Education furthermore implores the Governor of the State of Ohio and the Ohio General Assembly to protect students, school employees, and residents by instead enacting legislation which would, number one, ban the sale of assault-style firearms. 2, raise the minimum age to purchase firearms to 21. 3, ban high-capacity magazines and bump stocks. 4, require universal background checks which include relevant mental health information and previous interactions with the law. 5, create red flag laws to allow police, family members, coworkers, and others to petition a state court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who may pose a danger to others or to themselves. 6, create a complete universal database of those banned from purchasing firearms. 7, close the private sale and gun show loophole which waives the necessity of background checks. And 8, provide funding, including funding for schools, for enhanced mental health services and substance abuse treatment so that all individuals, including children, have sufficient access to these services. Now, I want to thank Dan Heinz because he wrote the resolution 4 years ago, which I basically pirated most of for this, and I open up for discussion.
Molly, just for the record, I'm assuming that you did speak with 795?
Oh, yes, Karen Rigo and
I'm
I have
sure.
had several conversations today.
I really support this. I have real problems with House Bill 99. One of the things that it has occurred to me is that in passing House Bill 99, the Ohio legislature is, it's sort of a bait and switch. People are looking to them to help solve the problem of gun violence in America. And what it seems to me that they're actually doing is they're shifting responsibility for the safety of for the safety of Ohioans. And they're basically washing their hands of it. They're saying, we, the legislature, are not responsible for ensuring responsible gun ownership, for ensuring the safety of Ohio's school children. And instead, they're trying to make teachers responsible by allowing teachers to be armed in their classrooms. And it's just dirty, because you can just hear the future of when, unfortunately, the next inevitable nightmare happens in America. The question is going to be, well, weren't any of those teachers armed? And there's even a legislator, looking for a word my mother would be proud of me for. There's a legislator in Ohio who has brought forth a bill that will add to the mandatory curriculum for Ohio students to learn defensive measures, basically self-defense measures. So they're even trying to shift the responsibility further away from the legislature, now from teachers to the individual students. And now we can blame the students for not taking responsibility for their own defense. And it's just such a complete dereliction of duty on behalf of the Ohio legislature to refuse to own this problem and to be so beholden to the gun industry that they are willing to turn their backs on the next generation of Ohioans. It's just awful. So thank you for doing this work, Malia. I don't remember this resolution at all from 4 years ago.
It's over 4 years ago. Well, that's, the fact that exactly the same language applies is what made my blood boil today.
I'd like to point out something that I think I said 4 years ago, but there's a RAND study that shows that even highly trained police officers will miss 60 to 70% of their shots in a dynamic situation. We're talking highly trained police officers
You mean the ones who've taken the full course of OPOTA training?
and
Yeah.
hundreds of hours of training and regular training at the range.
Yeah. But that's
And
the training that they just removed.
yes, I know. And I would like to know why our legislature so devalues our men and women in blue, that they think that you can give anyone the tools of the trade, a gun, and that they can do the job. And that's essentially what they're saying with this, is that they're saying, oh, well, we can give a gun to anyone, a teacher or any staff member, and they can do the job of a law enforcement person. And I think that that is demeaning to our police, and I think it's demeaning to teachers and staff in school buildings. Another thing I'd like to point out is that if you ever take a active shooter training, how to protect yourself in that situation.
Alice training, yeah.
Alice training, the first thing that they will tell you is you have to be aware that the person coming in, the perpetrator, has already made up their mind that they are not going to leave that building alive. That's the first assumption. That's why the training covers, run, hide, fight. And so to think that you're going to have a staff member who is armed and is taken by surprise, because the perpetrator always has the element of surprise, and they're always going to bring in, well, not always, but as we've seen in the vast number, they bring in an AK-47 to arm a staff member with something. You're not going to have them armed with an AK-47.
Right.
And so you've already set up unfair power balance, and the staff member is not going to be, they're going to be taken by surprise.
Well,
So
their
you-
job is to teach. Their job
Exactly,
is not to
exactly.
be standing at the door waiting for
So-
someone to show up.
How anyone can say that this will make students safer, and then the other thing that I think that we should share this resolution with our local police departments and with our local cities, because even police departments say, when you get into a dynamic situation, if you get in there and there's multiple people with weapons, you don't know who the perpetrator is, and it causes confusion, and it can actually create a worse situation. So I think that you've hit all the key points in this resolution. Thank you for dusting it off and revising it. But this is a situation that I feel really, really strongly about, and I think that anybody who thinks that this is going to make schools safer, they're not looking at all of the facts.
Yeah. But, these are the same teachers who cannot be trusted to
Pick out
choose
books.
appropriate curriculum and books for their students, That will be another, we just did that one, didn't we? Goodness, okay.
So disheartening.
It is.
Well, Malia, thanks for doing this. We've all been talking amongst ourselves about how we're seeing this influx of crazy legislation come through Columbus that is not in the best interest of students and student achievement. Common sense gun laws. Other countries have them. They don't have these kinds of problems. Those are the case studies we should be looking at, as opposed to looking at what the gun lobby and politicians who have to support gun rights feel like that they need to vote yes for in order to get reelected. How many dead students and staff members are there going to have to be before they reverse course?
I have no idea.
These ones are not. We need to vote them out.
That's it.
We need to vote in people who have a conscience, because none of these people do.
So I had a conversation today with other local school board presidents about the value of putting our voices together, or at least our names together on paper, in order to try to get a little bit more clout or a little bit more reception to our resolutions. And I will, assuming we vote to pass this, I will add it to a little library we're creating so that other school districts can look at our language and use it as a jumping-off point for themselves.
And I do think it's really, really important that we also share this with our cities and see if we can get our law enforcement to join.
Yeah.
Or the, police unions or whatever.
Well, I can make sure that it's forwarded to the right people.
That would be excellent.
Well, I can't stop thinking about our trade association, the Ohio School Board Association, and how they're namely silent in a lot of these things. And it's frustrating, and we know it's politics, okay? You're going to have red states, you're going to have blue states. You're going to have school board associations in states that are going to support more legislation like this. And they're not, again, they're not doing it in the interest of protecting kids. I mean, the whole concealed carry concept about, let's just throw the training out the window. I mean, that makes no sense to me.
It's like solving the opioid crisis by removing the requirement for a prescription.
That's a good analogy.
Great analogy.
Yeah, as I've said again, these legislatures are, making these dangerous decisions for our students in our community, and they're not doing their job. So if you're not doing your job, they need to be removed. And what we need to look at is make sure we vote and vote them out, period.
Yeah. Does this mean we could weigh in on the gerrymandering and pass a resolution about that?
We could, but you could see how far the Supreme Court of Ohio got with that, so. Okay, anything else? Then, Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll, please?
Need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step.
I motion that we consider the resolution in opposition to HB 99 that Malia authored for us.
I'll second it.
Now, Mr. Gaynor.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Mr. Posh,
Yes.
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Serini,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes. Now, do we have any board committee reports? I don't think we've had any committees meet that we're on. I do have a request, though, and that's whether somebody might be able to attend tomorrow's Reaching Heights board meeting in my stead.
I cannot.
7 o'clock, Coventry? Nope. Okay, well, then I will do it, but I was hoping I could get a substitute. Any new business?
I would just like to let folks know that there will be, if people interested in raising their voices in opposition to House Bill 616, which we passed a resolution on
A month
in
ago?
opposition to last month, which in a nutshell is Ohio's uniting the many of the ideas from the Florida's Don't Say Gay bill with critical race theory ridiculousness and opposition to social emotional learning. It's House Bill 616, and a rally has been called for the State House steps on 616, which is next week. So it's being pretty heavily presenced on social media, and would certainly encourage folks to attend if they're able.
Thank you.
On a happier note, since you mentioned Reaching Heights, I'd like to remind everyone that Reaching Heights Music Camp is happening again this
Yeah.
year.
Yes,
And the
next week.
concert will be on June 18th, Saturday, at the high school. Don't know what time, but usually it's about
It's 10:30
10:30,
usually.
yeah.
Because it's about 10:30 to noon on Saturday after 5 days of intense fun and music.
Yep, it's going to be great. It's great to see
June
that
18th?
returning. Yes, June
Saturday.
18th, Saturday. Yeah, it's going to be great to have that returning since, it hasn't happened for several years because of COVID. So thank you, Reaching Heights, for that.
Yay.
And to our staff who work it.
To all the volunteers.
Yes, tons of volunteers.
And the popsicles. Okay. I'm all about the popsicles. All right, any unfinished business? Oh. Other announcements that we have forgotten? Going once, going twice? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second that emotion.
Mr. Gaynor?
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes. Thank you, everyone, and good night.